Art from Everclear is here on the podcast. Art, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. Like we were just discussing, this is what, your sixth interview today? Everyone wants to talk to you about this album y'all got coming out.
I know it's a hard life, right? It's like 1% problems. I was complaining. My wife's like, "You're complaining because people want to talk to you about your new album? You're 61. Just shut up." I'm like, "Yeah, that's why I married someone smarter than me."
Right, to keep you in
and,
your place and to push you to do
and better
interviews.
looking all the way around, everything. Yeah.
Well, I'm certainly glad to have you on. Speaking of the album, like what can you tell us about it? Like Everclear has been around, for decades. I think what I saw is this is an homage to, 30 some odd years in the industry. So is that really the main inspiration behind the album? And what I saw, it's a live album too, right? Like you're re-recording a lot of your songs.
Well, it wasn't even that conscious of a thing. It's just like that's what we sound like live. We've
Mm,
always been a lot more rock and intense and guitar centric than our albums. Because when I grew up in the 70s, bands would do much more produced records, right? But live, it would be more two-dimensional and it'd be more intense and in your face. And I like both aspects of it. I like the where you could put cool production in there and just put things that have different levels and textures and all that stuff and dynamics. And then live, it's just kind of in your face.
mm,
And this is how we've always been live. And if anything, it's just a document for people to see what how we sound. And inadvertently, it's turned into what you're talking about, where it's kind of, documenting our whole career from first album to now, you know? And I think that's cool, but it wasn't set out to do that. We were just going to play the last show of our tour at the Whiskey a Go Go in LA, which I'd never played. I grew up in LA. I'd never
mhm,
played there. But I got a call about 3.5 weeks before from this guy that I knew used to work at Capitol Records, Tim Devine, and he worked for a new record label, indie record label called Sunset Boulevard Records. And he said, "Do you want to make a new original record?" And I go, "No, not at all. I have no urge. Thank you. Gotta go. Sorry. Bye, Tim.
mhm.
Be well."
Yeah.
He's like, wait a minute. You don't want to make a new record?" I go, "Man, I've made 10 records and other records by other bands I was in.
Yeah.
I don't feel the need. I don't feel the need. I do like, I write about one or two songs a year that I want to record. I give other people songs. I work on other people's songs. So I'm still being creative. But the idea of going in and spending a whole year making
Mm,
an album just doesn't sound attractive to me.
mhm.
Um, but he's like, "Well, you're playing the Whiskey in like 3 weeks. Why don't we record it and make a live record out of it?" I'm like, "Okay, we can record it, but if I don't like the way it came out, I'm not putting out a record."
Yeah, like it's
So
done.
I'll pay for the recording.
Yeah.
I'll get my guy out there, and if I like it, then we'll do a deal. And it came out pretty good. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Well, that kind of raises an interesting question for you because you've been doing this for so long. And like you said, you've done your own original music and songwriting and whatever. But like you said, you also like creating for other people or working with other artists. Do you have a preference? Like, do you like, performing Everclear songs, writing again for the band? Or do you really, really, really get a kick out of working with other artists and, like you said, songwriting for other people to perform?
I like working with other people, but no, doing my thing for me and my band, for Everclear is my band,
Mhm.
always has been. Um, no, that's my life's work, and I still love it. I still love doing it. I still love coming up with songs and seeing them go from an idea in here to whatever that is out there, holding
Mhm.
an album. Like actually in about 20 minutes, a guy, 20, 25 minutes, guy from the record label is coming with the actual vinyl record.
Oh, no way.
And he's going to film me opening up the box and stuff. The
Yeah.
reveal. Stupid. It's label stuff. I I don't care. I just want to get my hands on the album and go home and put it on my turntable, you know?
Yeah. No, exactly. Well, if you're that excited to get it, you must be that excited to go on tour too, right? Like the tour I was just checking out, you got a lot of dates lined up. And like
Yeah.
from what I could collect, because the Boston show, you're gonna be at Big Night Live, which is, a good mid-sized venue, I would say. Is that the theme for most of the tour stops? Like it's not stadiums, it's not arenas, but it's a little bit more intimate, right?
We're not that big. We do about 1,500 to 2,000 seats, which is really good business, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of bands would kill to do that kind of business. But we that's about right. That's my favorite shows. Anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000. It's you can see people's faces, you can see people jumping up and down, you can recognize people, fans or people but at the same time, when they applaud, it's big enough, it's just big enough that it gets that kind of, like, it makes your heart flutter a little bit, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And when 1,000 people or 2,000 people are singing your lyrics, it's pretty exciting.
Mm-hmm. And that leads into another question I literally had was what's the impact like, or what you've seen singing songs, like some of your biggest hits, just to name a few, like Santa Monica, Heroin Girl, like, you know, those songs all these years later, still getting on stage and performing them. Like what is the reaction from fans? And specifically, what does that feel like for you to, like I said, to still have so many people sing along or have these songs still pop off with an audience?
It's that's a good question. Really, it's interesting because the perspective's changed. It's gone from being a lot of young kids, when we first came
Mm-hmm.
up, high school, college level, maybe a little bit older, and a lot of those people have stuck with us and are now in their 30s and 40s and even 50s. And but at the same time, there's about 20 to 25% of kids in their teens and early mid 20s that were not old enough to really grasp Everclear when we came out. Some of them weren't even born yet.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they have, like, glommed on the 90s rock because it's rock and roll, and there's not a lot of, that's what they tell me when I ask kids, like, how did you get into Everclear? Some it's their parents, some it's siblings or friends of the family or uncles or aunts or some, but a large part of them are kids that just are disillusioned with contemporary music,
Mm-hmm.
and they gravitated to the 90s, you know, and listening to different bands of the 90s, a lot of them glommed onto us.
Right, yeah. I feel like that's one of the hardest things to do as an act. Like you would think that, the decade that you come up in, especially like the 90s and early 2000s was so iconic for your genre, like kind of like the grunge, emo, alternative rock scene. It's really impressive when you have a group that really does meet all of those generations or has generations of fans. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. But what I'd add to it is that I think the reason for it is that there's a classic rock element to it,
Mm,
that because all the bands that were making music in the 90s, we all grew up in the 70s, late 60s, 70s, early 80s, right? And so you've got all those bands, Zeppelin, um, Aerosmith, Cheap Trick, Black Sabbath, Beatles, Stones, going into like punk rock, Ramones, um, Sex Pistols, X,
mhm,
Clash, into new wave and into hip hop and into um, later alternative in the late 80s, like Husker Du and um, Replacements and Pixies and Jane's Addiction. And I think it's just all of a change. So what you're hearing in the 90s is kind of just that whole classic rock experience, which arguably was some of the best time for rock and roll. Um, and through a different prism, through a different looking at it through a different lens.
mhm.
But it's still the same thing.
Yeah.
That's always been my take on it. I've talked to other people in bands, women and guys who played in bands in the 90s and had success. And we
Mhm.
all grew up listening to a lot of the same music.
Yeah. Would you say that kind of helped your success? Because I'm looking at my notes here, and you know, you released an album in 90, I want to say either 97 or 98. It was So Much for the Afterglow. And that was to this
97,
day is still your only
97.
Grammy now. Oh, 97. Okay. And it was one of your best-selling albums, charted really well, had a couple singles off of it. Would you think that's because of
Four
exactly
singles.
four
Four
singles, which
singles.
is
Top three, two of them #1 singles. And guess what? We got nominated for an instrumental.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We didn't get nominated for those hit songs. We got nominated for the instrumental,
That's
which
how
we
you
lost
know
to a
they were.
jazz.
Even
We
though you
lost to a jazz
lost,
guy.
it was gonna
We
say,
got
but
lost. To,
they like at least
yeah.
acknowledged that you guys knew what you're doing with, the guitars and whatnot.
Well, we had the modern rock record of the year in '98 because we
Mm,
were, which meant for Billboard the modern rock, meaning we were the most played band at Modern Rock in
mm-hmm,
1998.
right.
So that, you know, we just, and we didn't set out to do that. We just set out to make a great record, you
Mm-hmm,
know? And I think bands and artists that try to write hit songs, I don't think it works.
mm-hmm,
Sometimes it might work, but for the most part, you you tap into something bigger than yourself, and that kind of stuff happens. That's been my
mm-hmm.
experience.
Yeah, I was gonna say like sometimes there are those algorithms with some artists where it's like you got to turn out a radio hit or like this certain chord will really hit with the radio or the ear candy phrase as we're all familiar with, like especially in the pop
Yeah,
community, like it's always been around. But like what you're saying, like you don't expect success sometimes. Sometimes it just comes your way because of certain trends or your audience really resonates with it. Is that something like has there been a common theme in your career and with being with Everclear that you've noticed has really helped your band with success?
absolutely. I think personally, I think if you make something that makes you excited,
Mm-hmm.
the chances are it's going to make other people excited. Um, it's really I try not to get deeper into it than that. I don't pay attention to algorithms. I'm not interested. I know the chords you're talking about. I get it. I know what they're doing. It doesn't interest me. I want to write songs that connect with me lyrically and musically
Mm-hmm.
and vibe wise and have that kind of swagger that you can't create from an algorithm, you know? And that's why pop music today isn't very rock and roll because it's not being created by from a rock and roll swagger, you know, like it was in the '90s or the '70s or the '80s or the '60s or '50s when it first started. It
Yeah.
doesn't have that. It doesn't have that punk rock mythos to it that that stuff did in the '50s when you had Eddie Cochran and Chuck Berry and Little Richard, and those guys were arguably more punk rock than any band that came out in the '70s. Any band of white boys calling themselves punk rocks came out in the '70s or '80s or '90s for that matter.
Right.
Um, but that being said, the music just it just it just defines itself if you're doing it. Here's a stupid word I'm going to use, but I can't think of a better one. Organically, you
Mm-hmm.
know, it's naturally by taking your influences and putting them into your music through your funnel and putting your spin on it. That's what it's always been to me. Um, and one thing I just want to say is like when I listen to contemporary pop, I hear some things that are kind of cool, but for the most part, it sounds like everybody's listening and watching what people are doing on their left and right, not what they're doing behind them.
Mm-hmm.
They're not listening to the music they grew up with. They're just trying to emulate, oh, they were successful, so let's do something kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that just comes off weak, weak, I think.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I'm curious, do you have any acts like nowadays that you really like, or you think kind of do more of the original, like bringing back classic rock age? Like, I can think of a couple. Like, I think Greta Van Fleet is an act that a lot of people really like nowadays. which kind of fits into that older sound. But would you
Yeah,
disagree, or do you have somebody else
it's like
like?
no, it's like a retro thing, and a lot of musicians that I know really don't like them. I think they're
Really?
fun. I think they're just fun. Yeah, but you're talking about old crusty guys like me, not cool kids like you. You know, they're like, oh man, that's just like a rip off from Zeppelin and this and that. I'm like, so what? It's fun. It's
Yeah.
rock and roll. You got kids going to see it. Um, I went to a coffee shop yesterday, and this 20-year-old girl smiling at me, and she's wearing a Greta Van Fleet shirt, and she's like, "Are you Art?" I go, "I'm Art." You mean? She goes, "Art from Everclear." I go, "Yeah," and she goes, "God, I'm a huge fan. I saw you guys, blah 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 blah, when I was 14 and my sister was 12." I go, "Your parents fans took you to it?" She goes, "Yeah." I go, "Cool." And she's wearing a Greta Van Fleet shirt. We talked
Yeah.
about Greta, and I just think it's cool. It's like when we play shows now,
Hmm.
we've got the people that grew up with us, but we also got those young kids coming out that I'd say 20% of our crowds now are like her age.
Hmm.
Yeah, she wasn't even born when we were putting those records out. Seriously,
Right.
she wasn't even born. And I just think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's so wild, huh? I guess you never would have expected to get recognized in a coffee shop in LA of all places. By a 20-year-old, I should say.
Yeah, yeah, that's not something you plan for, right?
Well, I also want to
Absolutely.
know a little bit more about, your own experience and we were talking about influences and, music and songwriting and stuff. And depending on how much you want to discuss, you know, you had a pretty like rocky childhood from what I understand, like moving around, some issues with your family. You were an addict at one point. Your brother and your sister are no longer with us. Have any of those life experiences come
My
into your
sister,
music?
my sister, two of my sisters are passed away, but not from drugs.
Okay,
My
yeah.
brother died of an overdose when I was 12. That's probably what you're referencing.
Yeah,
When,
I have that one. Yeah.
yeah, but my other two sisters died from like one a heart attack, the other something else, cancer
hmm
or something.
Right.
But
Yeah.
um, but what was your question?
Just if any of those life experiences have had a direct impact on your music.
Absolutely. I think everything has an impact on a writer. I mean, you're a writer. You create content. Everything that happens in your life, especially when it's really really great or
Mhm.
really bad, is gonna make it's gonna make an impact. Um, I the song Heroin Girl
Mhm.
wasn't about a girl. It was I I I created that from different things and put that line, there's a line in it where it goes, I heard a policeman say just another overdose. When my mom was at the morgue to identify well, my brother, she heard a cop saying that about him. And she went up to him and just said, that's not another overdose. That's my little boy.
Mhm.
And it
Mhm.
makes me want to cry. And apparently the cop just started bawling
Mhm.
because he was being insensitive and he knew it. And my mom called him on it. And it just makes you really, that kind of intensity. Um, I like it. I like it in music. I like emotional music. I like, um, and emo music very often is not emotional at all, but emotional music, emotional rock and roll. I love rock and roll. I grew up loving rock and roll. I will play rock and roll till that I die, whether it's fashionable or not. Don't really care. As long as people keep buying tickets, I'll keep playing rock.
Mhm. I mean, talking about tickets, like I hope the sales for this tour are going to be good, man. Like it seems like
They're
you still have this
doing really,
following. Oh, they are? You know how
it's
it's going?
doing really well, bro. It's doing well.
Do you have like any venues that you're really, we were talking earlier about that one venue, which the album is named after actually, Whiskey A Go Go. Like, do you have any venues that you're really excited to see or like any parts of the country like you're really looking forward to playing in?
Well, there's not too many places that we haven't been to or venues that we haven't played.
Mhm.
Um, the venue in Boston is I don't believe we played there, so
Mhm.
that's exciting. Was that Big Night Live?
Big Night Live. Yeah, it's a fairly new venue. Opened, I think, maybe 2, 3 years ago, I want to say.
Was it something else before?
It was, but I'm not the person to tell you.
So I'll know when I go there. If it was a club we played, and we played all over Boston. We even
Mhm.
played the Rat back in the day, um, the Rathskeller. Um, you know, it's exciting to go out and play, but at the same time, it's like there's not a lot of new places we're going. But to me, every show is unique, and I'm really excited to get out and play.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
going to be a great tour, and we're taking the Ataris, um, and the Pink Spiders, both really cool bands from the aughts. That's
Mhm.
going to be fun. I got time for two more.
I was gonna say we haven't talked about the new single yet, actually, because the album is mostly original songs, like we mentioned, but you have a new single coming out called "Sing Away." Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Incidentally, today we filmed a week ago today we filmed a video for it. We actually did a real video which we hadn't done in over 10 years for a song. And I'm gonna see the cut today,
Oh, cool.
apparently. Tonight. Well, so we'll see. But Sing Away was a song that was on my solo record, Sun Songs, that came out in 2019, but it was more of an acoustic version.
Hmm.
I played drums on it and bass, but it's not big guitars. It doesn't sound like Everclear. This version sounds like Everclear. Goes from like really soft to really heavy and hard. And it's a song about teenage bullying and teenage suicide,
Hmm.
about suicide, bullying leading to suicide, which I've had friends um, lose children to that. My daughters have both been bullied badly, my youngest one especially, and we've dealt with that. Um, and you know, just suicide is something, mental illness has run in my family as it does in most families. It's just people don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But it's something that I've been, and I think a lot of people are being much more upfront talking about mental illness, which I think is wonderful because it takes the stigma away from it.
Hmm.
And that's what I hope this song, if it accomplishes anything. I think it's just a great rock song, but it's also emotional. Going back to what we were talking about, the
Yeah.
emotion. It's an about emotional subject
Yeah.
for
Well,
sure.
that one, are you gonna perform that one on tour too, I assume?
Absolutely. We're gonna
Awesome.
we're gonna perform it. Yeah,
Yeah, that's gonna be great. A whole new experience for everybody, it sounds like.
absolutely.
Well, Art, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Why don't you let people know where they can, find Everclear's music, check out those tour dates we've been mentioning, and just keep up with all the good stuff you got going on.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me on. It was great talking to you. Sorry I ran a little bit late. Thanks for your patience. Yeah, Everclear's new tour starts September 6th in Lexington, Kentucky, goes around the whole country, ends up back in the desert here in Palm Springs at a place called Pappy and Harriet's on the 15th. Check us out. Check out our tour dates at everclearonline.com. You can also buy tickets there. You can buy VIP packages, merchandise, everything, one stop shop. Um, our new album, Live at the Whiskey A Go Go, which is actually very proud being an old guy who grew up with double live records back in the day. This is a double live record on Coke Bottle Green vinyl. And I'm about to see some because the guy from the label is about to knock on that door and bring me some vinyl, which I'm going to see for the first time. So come out to the shows. We're doing something on this tour that we haven't done for a while since COVID. Before COVID, we used to go out to the merch booth after every show and sign and just meet people and stuff. And we're doing it on this tour for the first time since COVID. So hope to see you
Awesome.
guys.
Get more people in the doors. Art, thank you so much again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.